Okay, true story. As you may or may not be able to tell from our lavish set and top-notch production quality, this show is entirely self-financed. That means that when we have some disposable income, we put it into the show. Lately, we have been looking to upgrade our sound and lighting rigs. Sound and lighting are the bane of every production, and we have nothing but respect for the people who do it for a living, but I digress here. Lately, we've been shopping for sound equipment. We got our eye on a 4-track portable recorder and some corded lavalier microphones. It's all pretty standard stuff. But, as we've been shopping for this specialty equipment, we've been stopping short of buying. Not because we don't need the stuff, or because we haven't found what we need at a reasonable price. We keep stopping ourselves because it feels unnecessarily self-indulgent. I mean, should we really be spending money on things that don't put food on the table, gas in the car, medicine in the cabinet, or a roof over our head? Could we find a much cheaper alternative that will still get the job done? Haven't we already spent enough on cameras and lights and backdrops? Can't we just make do with what we have? So, here's the thing. We, like many others, are suffering from a common problem known as financial imposter syndrome, or more specifically, the long-term emotional scarring from growing up poor. Poverty is more than just a lack of financial resources. Poverty is also a lack of opportunity. Poverty is generational. Poverty leaves scars long past the point where you aren't poor anymore. Let me make this very clear right here. Poverty is not a moral failing. Living in poverty is a life where every single day is a struggle between the haves and the have-nots. This never-ending battle isn't good for anyone with less than an 8-figure salary. It's a system designed to keep regular people hating on their own and not looking at the wealthy so-called job creators who tend to make 2,000 to 3,000% more than their average worker's salary. Not their lowest paid worker, the average one.
But Xander,
I hear you sneering through the screen.
you don't look poor. You live in a house. You go to college. You probably have a car.
I do, in fact. She's lovely. Her name is Betty.
And you look like you eat more than enough food pretty regularly.
I know, but hey.
Oh.
You're correct on all of those things. Now. But my parents grew up poor. My dad lived in a housing project in San Antonio and was the youngest of 5 kids, living with a single mother who sometimes worked 3 jobs at a time. My mom qualified for all the financial aid available to go to college back when it was $400 a semester because her family barely scraped by on a zookeeper's salary. Their parents were poor. My paternal grandmother was an orphan in Germany in the aftermath of World War II. My maternal grandmother was the oldest of 5 kids, lived in the poorer parts of the south side of San Antonio in the 50s, and sometimes went without food. The further you go back, the more poor people you find. The most basic definition of poverty is the state of not having enough material possessions or income for a person's basic needs. Real first level of Maslow's hierarchy kind of stuff. The current poverty line in the United States for a family of 4 is $26,500. Let's do a little math here. The Department of Housing and Urban Development recommends that housing should be no more than 30% of your income, or you may not be able to afford other necessities such as food or health care. So, 30% of $26,500 per year is $7,950. Broken down further, that's $662.50 per month. Still with me? Okay. At $628 a month, West Virginia has the lowest average rent in the United States, followed by Montana at $678 and Oklahoma at $699. These are the only 3 states with rents below $700 a month. So, if you live at the poverty line, you may have to live in one of those 3 states to afford shelter for you, your spouse, and your 2 kids. But that is the top level of the poverty line. Make less than that, and you may qualify for some government assistance, but make 1 penny more than that, and you're shit out of luck. Poverty means you have to give up food for housing or medicine. And while we're on the subject of food insecurity, let's take a look at the dreaded and much derided food stamps program. That same family of four, if they qualify for SNAP, on average will receive $638 a month in food assistance. Break that down, and it amounts to about $5 and change per person, per day. Mind you, there are very strict limitations on what may be purchased with SNAP benefits, and those limitations vary greatly by state. On top of all that, someone using their SNAP card to pay for food will have to deal with the withering stares of all the people around them and judging them and making assumptions about their life choices or circumstances. And Chibi help you if you have a cell phone in your hand when you use your food card. Also, don't be dressed in anything other than rags, and you better be walking home or else. There's no end to the stories floating around the internet about somebody allegedly standing in line behind a welfare queen who's buying steaks for her dog with her food stamps while fondling a brand new iPhone Infinity and peeling off hundreds and fifties with her bling-encrusted, overly manicured fingers for anything the card doesn't cover, and then walking out to a brand new, super expensive car and driving off the trunk full of lobster and beer. A member of my own family swears he saw that exact thing happen personally. Yeah, right, Mr. Thin Blue Line. Tell your one asterisk fairy tale walking.
Oh, dear.
And it does not stop there. Red hat yahoos in Congress and red state legislators are constantly trying to figure out ways to limit or deny health care coverage, or housing subsidies, or food assistance, early childhood programs, free school lunches, and so on and so forth to people that are legitimately suffering. All the while, these asshats are insisting the people in need submit to random drug testing and weekly proof that they are looking for work to make sure they're not sucking dry the government teat. Alright, just for context, nearly 1 in 6 children in the richest country on the planet live in poverty, which means they often don't have access to education or shelter and suffer from extreme food insecurity. About 1.3 million of our nation's veterans live in households that participate in SNAP. More than 7 million people over the age of 65 live below the poverty line. But the America Firsters and the taxation is financial rape libertarian types insist that if these freeloading kids, disabled veterans, and old people would just get off their lazy asses and pull themselves up by their endlessly hypothetical bootstraps, they would need assistance. And this is the same group of people that also insist that churches can take care of the poor. You know, like how gazillionaire evangelical prosperity gospel preacher Joel Osteen opened his doors to Houstonians suffering during Hurricane Harvey a few years back. Oh wait, no, he didn't. But HEB had food trucks and rescue supplies on the ground within hours.
Yeah.
Once again, I digress.
Yep.
If it was just a case of not having enough money to cover food, shelter, clothing, warmth, and so on, you would think that the poverty problem would be snap to fix. Hell, Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, with a combined net worth of nearly $500 billion, could knock that out in the Americas toot sweet. They make more a day in interest on their fortunes than some small countries make in an entire damn year. But it isn't just about access to income or assets. There's also a poverty of opportunity. This is the type of poverty that is generational. It's a poverty trap or a cycle of poverty, caused by self-reinforcing mechanisms that cause poverty once it exists and persist unless there is outside intervention. This falls under 2 categories. The first is the type that happens because the lack of opportunity due to systemic racism, misogyny, or other forms of discrimination that make it infinitely more difficult, even with the best of intentions, to access the economic and social resources necessary to break out of the poverty trap. The second is a developmental scar that's difficult to shake. I'll give you an example. Let's say that for your entire life, the couch in your living room was either something that you picked up on a curb after being discarded, an ancient hand-me-down, or, in really rare cases, a brand new IKEA flat-packed, build-it-yourself envy of any freshman college dorm couch. One day, you go to a friend's house that has expensive couches. They say their mom spent $3,000 on the couch that they have their dirty ass feet on right now. First, you want to smack them for putting their muddy shoes on the furniture, because if you did that, you'd be cleaning up that disgusting scud your own damn self.
Yep.
And more importantly, you cannot conceive of anyone spending more on a couch than your parents did on the last used car they had to buy, because the previous, even cheaper one, just died. I mean, what kind of a weirdo spends $3,000 on a couch? Over time, your family finances improve. You're living a little less hand to mouth, paycheck to paycheck. You move out and have your own place and a decent salary. Yet instead of investing in a $3,000 couch that will last you 20 years, since reupholstery on good furniture is more financially responsible than buying a brand new couch, you buy one more in a long line of cheap and disposable fast furniture sofas that break after 2 moves or 4 really successful parties. After 10 years, you've spent more on couches you no longer own than if you had just invested in the $3,000 couch in the first place. It's really hard to break this cycle. Your knee-jerk reaction to spending is just to quickly pick the fastest and cheapest option to get past the emergency. Because every point in your life up until now means that extra money goes towards emergencies only. You aren't saving for a treat or a vacation. You're saving for an inevitable disaster. But for a while now, you've been in a financial situation where a flat tire or a worn-out TV isn't as much of an oh shit moment as it used to be. What do you do now? How do you break the cycle? How do you escape feeling poor? Fuck by now, I'm not that evolved yet. Every generation before me worked their asses off to make a better life for their kids, including my parents. In spite of their best efforts to make things as normal as possible, I still grew up like an ungrateful mammal, wanting things. You see, kids in my neighborhood often had much nicer stuff and a hell of a lot more of that nicer stuff. They got to go to summer stuntman camps, a myriad of dance and acting classes, and had Austin City Limits full access passes. They went on family vacations to Hawaii or Disney World. They got their driver's license, cars, and paid insurance handed to them at 16. We couldn't afford any of that. I was on free lunches all the way through school. For a while, we qualified for Children's Medicaid, or CHIP. There were days where we had to search around the house for nickels and dimes to pay for gas to get me to school. We relied a lot on help from our families, our friends, our synagogue, and even some very understanding Catholic charities to pay the electricity and water bill. A few times, my parents made use of the local food banks just so I could eat. Early on, I learned the value of $1. By the time I was in 2nd grade, I knew that you could pay half to the electric company and half to the gas company so you could cover the past due water bill before the water gets shut off again. I didn't do outdoor or sports type activities because I knew we couldn't afford me getting injured. I learned these things long before most of my friends and many of my adult neighbors. But now, things are better. Our situation is no longer one broken catalytic converter away from total financial ruin. But the scars from generations of anxiety about the cost of a simple couch will be tough to ignore. Maybe one day, hopefully soon, I'll be able to buy that 4-track portable recorder and the Bluetooth lavalier microphones for the show and not be worried that it'll be a complete waste of money that we just can't spare. It's a momentary distraction that won't advance any of my fundamental needs. Or it'll end up really useful in the short term, but a total waste of time, money, and effort in the long run. But if I can find a way to push past that anxiety and doubt, maybe on that day, I'll have the confidence to finally break the cycle. We'll be back with comedian Jay Black. Stick around.
Yeah! Woo-hoo!